Please just indicate if you can see my screen by sending an emoticon, a smiley face or anything. The screen should now show you the PowerPoint slide. So if you can just send anything there, smiley face, so that I can know you can see the screen. You're not seeing the screen? Okay, how about now?
Yes, I can see it now.
Or previously it couldn't see the screen. Thank you for that confirmation.
Yeah.
All right, we are on chapter 8. So if we can have as well a textbook in front of you, because we're going to highlight there on chapter 8. And on chapter 8, it's about collecting primary data. So it should be on page, let's see now. Page 129. Page 129. Collecting primary data, quantitative techniques. I will also be referencing the marketing research proposal, because when you do practical application, you'll need to actually apply this practically to the case study. So if we log into Brightspace and we follow with the screen and we go to the subject, marketing research, and then under content, we've got the basic guidelines that everyone should have by now. So they are under practical guide, research proposal guidelines. And if you quickly download that, okay, I save. You will see these guidelines, the guidelines that we follow for research proposal from 1 to 8. We have covered introduction, research problem, research design. We are in this step 4 data collection. So let's quickly look at the items that come through under data collection. On the next page, we've got step number 4, data collection. This was chapter 6, which we've covered regarding secondary data, how you can collect it, internal and external secondary data. So today we're going to focus on primary data. We're going to focus on 4.2.1 as well as 4.2.2. So you will see there you've got also 4.2.3 as well as 4.2.4 data collection instrument. This is the next chapter, which is chapter 9 as well as 4.2.4. So chapter 8 as well as chapter 7, they cover primary data. So I'm going to be very specific here. And please take note that primary data can be collected into 2 forms. And if you look into the slide, let me quickly, as well as in the textbook, you've got that figure there that illustrates the collection of primary data. In the textbook is on page 132. And in that figure 8.1, you've got we follow under primary data, and you will see we've got qualitative data as well as quantitative data. These are the research approach or data collection approach. Just take into account this is an approach, whether it's qualitative or quantitative. So depending on the research design, which we choose in a research proposal. So if you quickly reference the research proposal, you'll remember that on 3.1, we choose the approach. If it's qualitative approach, then you must actually follow data collection approach, data qualitative as well. If it's quantitative, meaning that is a large sample size, as well as they are testing a hypothesis, we will follow a quantitative approach. And then we've got different data collection approach under quantitative data design, research design there. So qualitative approaches, they are only two. So whenever you find that the research is qualitative, meaning that they want to explore something that is unknown, or they are still trying to provide guidelines, which means they won't interview many people. They'll only interview few researchers or few people that know the subject very well, and then they can detail those guidelines. There are two data collection approach that we have under qualitative. They are discussed on chapter 7, but we don't necessarily go through chapter 7. But for your interest's sake, you need to know them. It's just those in-depth interviews. That is one. In-depth interviews as well as focus groups. So what you want to do here, you want to write with a pen or a pencil, just the page number, so that you can see those two data collection approaches that you can suggest should the research become qualitative. So under qualitative, you're going to write there, refer to page 101. So you can say refer to page 101 next to qualitative data here. And then you will see on page 101, you've got the diagram that shows you the approaches that is in-depth interview. Where is in-depth interview, it refers to one-on-one interview, long discussion that could take about 30 minutes or 1 hour with the participant. And then focus group, it's about 6 to 12 people that they attend that interview. So our focus is on quantitative. So we'll be discussing the approach that is quantitative here. So we've got, as you see in the diagram, we've got three approaches: surveys, observation, and experiment. There is little difference between experiment and observation, but huge difference between surveys against observation and experiment. So you will see in the next table where I discuss surveys, I compare them with observation. Observation is similar to experiment. The only difference is that the subjects that we are observing, it's either humans or we are observing or we are manipulating variables. So if you're manipulating variables, we are manipulating things such as changing a color in a lab and so on. It becomes more of an experiment than observation. But if we are sitting in a supermarket or we are just looking at consumers or shoppers, how they shop, that will become observation. So let's talk about surveys. The first characteristic that we have there regarding surveys is that surveys, they rely on verbal, there is a verbal or written communication. And if you open on page 131, you will see that's where they define what a survey. And you can highlight there in the paragraph on page 130, where they write the survey method. The first sentence, the communication method known as surveys involves collecting data from selected individuals through verbal or written communication. So the key ingredient or key element that we take here is that there must be some communication with the respondents. That communication can be verbal, can also be written. So most of the time, even if we send a letter or we send a survey link via email and the respondents click on the link and then they complete the survey, they still communicated with us. There was communication, it was just a written communication that happened. Verbal, it's obviously when we interview face to face and so on. If it's impossible to communicate with the respondents, we tend to use observations because you will see their observations, there is no direct communication with the respondents. That's the difference between surveys and communication. Here we will simply, for example, watch video recordings and of those respondents. They can be aware that they are being observed. Sometimes they are not aware and so on. So the key differentiator here is that with surveys, we want to communicate. We want to talk to them, even if it's a written communication. There is always a research instrument that is used to collect data throughout this. So, for example, in the survey, we can use something such as a paper with questions, and we refer to that document as a questionnaire. We're going to discuss more about the questionnaire on the next chapter, which is chapter 9, but the questionnaire is just an instrument that is used for verbal communication. So that questionnaire can contain questions such as what is your gender, what is your income, how would you rate a service, and so on, to collect your attitudes and so on. Because we don't communicate with respondents under observations, we use the instrument such as a recording device. We can also have a human as an instrument which collects data, which means I'm observing people and then I write that down data. So the instrument that I've used there, it will still be a questionnaire in a way. So we've got the methods, and these methods are also illustrated on page 132 in that diagram. For survey, we've got personal interviews, which are further divided into two. Personal interviews, they means contact. You become face-to-face contact with the respondents. So that could happen by going through door to door, and then you ask them to complete a questionnaire. And you will see on the next page, it starts by explaining for you the personal interview starting on page 136. You can also highlight there, personal interviews take place face-to-face. Interviewer asks the respondent such as question about specific subject. And you will see in diagram or figure 8.3 on page 137, you've got different types of personal interviews. You've got door-to-door, mall intercept, executive interviewing. In the slide here, you've got mall intercept as well. Sometimes the word intercept, obviously it means that you intercept them in the street or on anywhere where you meet them. So some research textbook will refer to this as intercept interview rather than saying mall intercept. So this one is an example. It's specific to say you intercept them going to the mall, and then you find shoppers while they're shopping, you try and ask them questions, ask them to participate in a research study. And then with the executive one, which is not on the slide, it talks about office. So it's either way, I prefer the word intercept. You can stick to the word intercept and just apply it to any environment. For example, if they're gonna be interviewed at university, you can call it university intercept survey. If they are being intercept in the office, which is an executive intercept, you can still call it office intercept, or you can intercept them maybe at bus stations or train stations. So you will try and align as well as articulate the term that you can use with the intercept survey. It simply means that you are intercepting consumers at their point of, it could be a point of purchase, such as mall and so on, or point of transport, of transit, whereby like they are sitting at the bus stop and so on. So you will have telephone interviews as another method. And then telephone interviews, it's very important to actually remember that when you define or discuss these elements, you try not to use the words that are indicated here. So for example, if we say define or discuss what is a telephone interview, we don't expect to see the word telephone again in your definition or in your sentence there. So try and eliminate this word so that it becomes more articulated and it's more clear to the reader. For example, I've seen students saying telephone interviews are interviews conducted throughout the telephone. There is no definition there because I'm still seeing the word telephone, and I need you to replace that with something. Everything that you define, it should not actually be in a sentence or your definition. So telephone interviews, if you use the word things such as mobile phone, SMS, calling the respondents. So try and articulate it clearly. You will see that the definition that they provide on page 140 as well regarding telephone interviews is not so much clear. So you try by saying telephone interviews, for example, this is by calling the respondents and asking him or her the questions, and then they answer the question and throughout the phone or a mobile cell phone and so on. So as long as I don't see the word telephone, it becomes more relevant and more valid. You will see in the textbook, you also have advantages and disadvantages of all these interviews. Please read them at your own time, as well as just to understand further. I won't be able to go through each and every survey method in terms of advantages and disadvantages. The most important thing is for you as a student to know the differences between these survey methods and which one I should use in certain circumstances. For example, which one should I use if I don't have enough budget? Which one is cost lower? So take your time at some stage and read those advantages and disadvantages, but it's more general and more common sense. So if you understand the interview process, you will be able to you can even be able to choose the correct method here. Then we've got postal survey. Previous textbook referred to it as a mail survey as well. The postal survey tends to be looking like it's kind of like outdated, but it's still a relevant as well as an applicable survey method. It's on page 144. And then you can also highlight the first sentence under postal survey there. They say in the postal survey, the researcher posts a structured questionnaire to the respondents who fills it in and return it to the researcher. You will see they don't use you'll see in that definition that it's more clear than using the same word postal in their definition. So with the postal survey, mail survey, what we understand here is that this is a method whereby you're gonna use to send a questionnaire. So obviously it's about communication. You can imagine the time that it will take with South African Post Office delivery and so on, but it's still relevant. So at some situations, it has more advantages than the other method. So you just have to think about those advantages. For example, it could be something whereby the respondents, you are asking them questions that are embarrassing. They don't want to be known. So if I don't want to be known, I can complete the questionnaire easily. I know I have not acted with anyone who could see me. Remember, with web-based survey, although it's similar to postal, there's still some privacy issues and concern about the respondents, about data on the website being leaked, things such as scammers and so on. So web-based is internet, basically internet survey, which is the last one that you have there. And then with web-based surveys, you'll see they are discussed on page 149 there. This one, we can say a lot about web-based survey, internet survey, your survey monkey. Some of the surveys that you take over in the internet, that they send you a link and then you participate in the survey or you answer those questions. They could be through a cell phone as well or through a smartphone as well. And then those survey methods, usually they will be about you rating the product or filling out the information. But this web-based survey, it has some advantages and quite a lot of advantages over, for example, it could be things about such as we don't print here, we don't hire interviewers, even capturing data. Remember, with all these survey methods, we need to capture data. So what the respondent says to us, we need to capture that on the system. But with web-based, remember, the respondent captures the data themselves. It's like an online application. So This is the internet basically. So think thoroughly about this. It's 4 methods. You'll see the first one is divided into 2. It's 4 methods: personal, telephone, postal, as well as web-based survey, and apply to a specific case study depending on the reason behind it. So we're gonna look into later on into the how do you choose the appropriate one. Let's talk quickly about observation, comparing it with survey. So now with observation, like I've indicated here, there is no communication with the respondents. We've got, you will see that the slide is written into, it seems like it's 5 observation methods, but it's basically 2 methods. All of them is 2 methods. So that observation can be structured, disguised, direct, natural, human, or it can be structured and then it's non-disguised. So you choose between each variable because these are the opposites of that observation method. We're gonna look into this one into detail just now. Let's quickly go there. We're gonna look into this one into detail. I think they are in the later stage of the chapter. So let's finish with the survey methods. The limitations of a survey methods. So if you talk about why should I not use a survey? So in other words, what are the limitations that we have here? We know that with observations, the first limitation that we can say, what are the limitations of observation? There is no communication with the respondents. So looking at the difference between observations and survey, what are the limitations of survey, meaning that these are the disadvantages of surveys in a way. Firstly, surveys, they cost a lot, they are expensive. You think about the interviewing process, you think about the remuneration of interviewers, you think about printing, data analysis, as well as, so survey methods are very expensive. Remember, if you choose to use a different method, like as well as observation, there are certain costs that you can cut out. For example, maybe you don't have to remunerate respondents because they were not aware that they were being observed, but it's impossible to communicate with someone and they participate without them knowing that they are participating. So they always know and you value their time. So there is a cost involved for that. There is limited time available. It's talking about the time between the researcher and the respondents. So in terms, it's also talking about the research time, meaning that maybe the results are needed before the end of a specific period. For example, if now they indicate to us that we should conduct a research regarding the influence or the impact of COVID on students, and they want to use these research findings to actually make decisions in terms of your academic year. You will see that the academic year, it's too limited. We have limited time. It's already August now. So if you're going to use a survey method, you'll have to actually take more than 6 months for this interview process to actually go through, because designing a questionnaire takes a time. Questionnaire that being approved, it takes another time as well. So survey method, you must give yourself enough time. That is one limitation. The fourth one is artificial data. It talks about fake data. Let's quickly wanna reference the textbook regarding artificial data. The word artificial, it simply means fake. It simply means not real as well. So in other words, artificial data, it's remember, we will be asking respondents question. There is a difference between the data that you get when you ask someone a question and data that you get when you observe that person. So the respondents can lie. And if they lie, we are simply collecting fake data. They can lie because they are afraid or they are embarrassed. So all these limitations are on page 132. I quickly wanted to reference that part about artificial data there. And you will see on page 132, you can highlight those limitations. The last bullet there, it says As the essence of a survey is a communication process between humans, it is a subject to those weaknesses related to human communication. The respondents may not answer truthfully, may exaggerate to avoid feelings of embarrassment. Alternatively, the respondent may simply misinterpret the question asked, which means they will end up providing incorrect data. So with survey, for example, let's say right now we have a research problem, and our problem is to whether consumers are actually interested in buying our products or not. So as a company, we can use two research approaches or data collection approaches. We can use a survey, which means we ask the respondents, are you interested in this product? Would you purchase this product? And if the respondent says, yes, we will purchase this product, then we collected the data using a survey method. Or we can use an observation method whereby we take the samples of the product, we put them in the supermarket, and then we simply look at the sales, or we look at the respondents, or we compare that with the purchase in the till point, whether people are interested in buying that product. So we've got those two options available, observation and survey. And then if we tend to use the survey, the respondents, they can tell us that they are interested into buying our products, where else they end up not buying, where else when we're using the observation method, we are collecting more of a correct data. So just take into account with the survey method, most of the times we tend to collect artificial data. There's a data that you can collect which is fake, which is not which is incorrect, and it tends to be because of many reasons. And then survey errors. There is a lot of errors when you conduct a research in a survey method, and this results into the data being artificial. So let's talk about these survey errors, because this is a practical question, so you must be able to practically apply those survey errors as well to a specific case study. So on page 133, you'll see you've got all those survey errors. Let's start with the interviewing error. You can highlight in the textbook as well. So interview error, the meaning of that error or of that mistake, it's whereby we interview a very small portion of the population and make inferences. For example, if you look at TV adverts, you look at some adverts, they will say, thank you, South Africa, for voting us #1 brand. And you think, I've never voted for this brand. Why is it #1? So we need to think about making general statements based on the number of that interviews that you have conducted. So in most of these research cases, whereby they say 9 out of 10 women voted for this product and so on, they interview an appropriate number of people to make a general statement. For example, in South Africa right now, if we are 60 million, approximately 60 million, how many people should be interviewed for us to say everyone in South Africa feels the same? There is some methods that can be used to generate the sample size to ask you how many people you can interview. Some say 10%, which could be like 6 million. If you interview 6 million people, then you can make general statement. So this error or this mistake, it's whereby we interview such a small number and we make inferences about everyone. So that will be us interviewing 100 people and then we make inferences about South Africa as a whole. How can we avoid this error? In simple words, we can obviously increase the sample size, meaning that we can interview more people. So if we see that we're interviewing too little people, we can interview a lot of people and then we don't have that problem. Or we can interview everyone, interviewing the whole population. That always eliminate this error completely because no one can judge you there. So this could be something such as census surveys, for example, census, that's whereby they collect data about the country or of the population of the country as a whole. So that will be, for example, if TUT wants to know, let's make an example. If TUT wants to know how do students, maybe what challenges do they face online, they can interview. TUT usually has 60,000 students registered. So if 10% of that 60,000 is 6,000, so that will be a sample that they can interview, or they can interview 60,000 to avoid making assumptions. Interview everyone, that will actually eliminate that error. Interview every student. And lastly, you can rather not make any inferences. That is another suggestion that you can always suggest to overcome this error. These suggestions are not in the textbook, so these are practical suggestions. I must be very specific about this one. You can think about them practically, use common sense. Some of the words you might find in the textbook, but they are not clearly articulated. So in the slide here, you will see that if you don't make any inferences, that's a suggestion. It simply means we have interviewed 6,000 students at TUT. Instead of saying TUT students are happy or TUT students are satisfied, we can clearly say the respondents or third-year marketing students are satisfied because those are the students that we've interviewed, and then we don't make inferences about every student and in our report. So these are the suggestions, and then no one can actually question your research. So it's always important to know these survey errors as well as to think about the suggestion so that your research becomes more valid. Remember, the research in marketing research, the more it has errors, it becomes more invalid. Sample design error, you will see on the next page, page 134. Simple design error, in simple words, is interviewing wrong respondents there. So instead of interviewing teenagers, maybe we interview someone who's actually older than the teenage age, or instead of interviewing students, we interview someone who was on campus but was not a registered student. So interviewing wrong of respondents, how can we avoid that? So you can think practically. You will see that your answers will be similar to the one that on the slides. For example, we can train the interviewers to identify the respondents or to ask questions about the respondents, or you can validate the sampling plan as well. Validating the sampling plan, it simply means the data that we collected, which means if the respondents indicated that they are actually female, we can validate that by actually calling the respondents to say maybe they make a mistake in that question, or they are actually, is true what they are telling us, they are students. And then validating that sampling plan, it ensures that we will interview the correct respondents, or we interview the correct respondents. You can also suggest any other method that comes into your mind here, but it should be as practical as appropriate, as well as relevant to marketing research. The idea or the important thing is to understand the error. When you say what is a sample design error, you know that, okay, we have designed now a sample wrongly, which means we've, for example, when we talk about sample design, if you understand the meaning of this word, it's easy to understand the error. The sample is the people that we're gonna interview. The design, we design that. For example, if we say we're gonna interview students, we're gonna interview marketing students, we're gonna interview females, this age, this is the design that we have made as researchers. And then sample is those people we're gonna interview. So if we make a mistake here, for example, we say we're gonna interview 30 years. However, maybe our research problem is not about 30 years. Our research problem is about NRF, which is something such as funding into is bursaries for postgraduate students. So we interviewed undergraduate students, whereas we were supposed to interview postgraduate students. So that design can happen. So you can eliminate that by training the interviewers to interview correct people, as well as validating the sampling plan. No response error or response error, which occurs into two. That could be, for example, there is no answer that is provided by the respondents, or they give you wrong answers. How can we avoid that? If respondents said they are not interested to participate, think practically once again. How can we avoid, what suggestion can we come up to overcome respondents that are not interested to participate in the survey? We go to a shopping mall, we greet the respondents, hello, can you please participate? Are you interested in participating in the survey? All of them say no, 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 no. We are in a rush, I wanna do shopping. What can we do there? You can avoid asking embarrassing questions. You can also remunerate the respondents as well. For example, if you give them money or airtime for participation, they tend to participate more. So you will see these are just general suggestion. Interview error. Interview error could occur whereby the interviewers, they are cheating, which means they are fabricating the answer. They are taking a questionnaire, they complete it themselves, and then they bring back that questionnaire, and then they say it was completed by the respondents. How can we avoid that? If we supervise those interviewers, for example, it can work. Supervision works quite a lot. For example, if they're in a mall and then you hire a supervisor, and then the supervisor will be also walking around, or you can properly train those interviewers. They know the benefits, they know the when you train them, they know the implications of collecting or cheating on the interview. They know in terms of the ethics as well. And then if they are properly trained, they hardly would they wouldn't cheat as well. Administrative error, that is where we incorrectly capture the data. For example, respondents indicated that they buy 9 products, or 9 as a number, but now when we capture, we enter it on the Excel, we type 6, for example, or it's 52, and then we type 25. How can we avoid that error? Data cleaning is another suggestion that you can come. Data cleaning, it will be by whereby one person, I capture the data, and then I take that data, I give it to another person, he captures the data as well. So 2 people have captured the data, and then we let Excel find the differences or similarities in our data. So if it finds our data is 100% similar, it means the data is clean. But if it finds differences, then we'll know that we can actually clean that data to find out the numbers, why they are missing, and so on. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, all these suggestions, in my own opinion, rather than focusing on the slides, on the suggestion that I already made, focus on the survey errors, know these survey errors, what are they, and then you can think out of the box any suggestion. So when we say what is an administrative error, or we say what are the possible survey errors that could occur in this research project. So if you think about the response error or non-response error, respondents refuse to participate. Besides offering remuneration to participation, how, if you understand the error itself, that the respondents are refusing to participate, how can we overcome this error? How can we make them more interested? So one person, besides offering remuneration, will think about the interviewer's clothing, for example. They should look professional. That also takes in a role, it plays a huge role in someone participation. First impression lasts the most as well. So you can think about any suggestion, but it should be as practical as possible. So understand the survey errors more. And lastly, we spoke about the observations. So there are techniques of the observations. They're towards the end of the chapter. So if you quickly go to, it should be page 150, let's say. Page 156, the survey the observation method. And you can highlight, but it's already in the box there, but you can highlight that definition, what is observation as well there. We've already discussed this in terms of observation, that this does not involve direct communication with the respondents. But if you read in the textbook, there in that box on page 157, observation is the systematic recording, description, analysis, and interpretation of the behavioral patterns of people, objects, or occurrences in a manner that does not involve direct communication with the respondents. The important part is that that we don't communicate with the respondents directly there, which means actually there is no direct communication at all. So with the observation, we've got techniques, and then these techniques they are on page 161. You don't have 10 techniques once again, ladies and gentlemen, here. You've got the difference between 1 and 2, difference between 3 and 4, difference between this and this one. But you only have one observation technique. So how do you do this in a research project? Let's say this is our research project. And here we said our data collection approach is observation. So here you will have techniques as an example. Remember, you can, on the approach here, you can have two. It's either you can have a survey or you can have observation. So if in this case we said we're going to have observation, quickly have that. If we said we're going to have observations, if it was surveys, which means there was direct communication, and then you motivate there, for example, observation, because it should be something that talks about there is no communication with the respondents. For example, let's say we're gonna watch recordings, CCTV recordings, which means we did not communicate with the respondents. And then when it comes to the method, observation techniques, you will see there what you need to do on that page. It starts by saying structured versus unstructured observation on page 161. And that's what you have here on the slide. So the first thing is to indicate whether yours is going to be structured or unstructured. So let's get the difference between the two. So structured observation, it's whereby you observe certain behavior. That is on page 161. You will see there. In that paragraph, structured observation, they write, with structured approach, the researcher must have specific hypotheses in mind. So structured observation, it's whereby, for example, we ask you how many products does the respondents purchase? And then you observe those shoppers in a shopping mall. So you are observing how many products. There is a certain hypothesis. Or do respondents actually spend more than 10 minutes looking at our product, or they spend less than 10 minutes? And then you will see that when you observe those respondents, there is a hypothesis in mind. With unstructured observation, we can observe anything to develop an understanding. There's actually a video here. Remember, with unstructured, it simply means we don't have a hypothesis in mind. What we're observing from respondents, we're just observing their behavior. Whatever happens, we write down. So we don't know what's going to happen. So in this video, they were showing respondents in an elevator. Let's see if. Okay. So this was a research project, ladies and gentlemen. What was happening here, we wanted to observe the behavior of respondents in an elevator. You will see with that lady there, she's looking at the back. No one cares about her. No one asks any questions. And then that's what we can write down. So this is our subject that we are testing. So if you look, she just tends to look away. And you look at anyone else in the elevator, they don't care, they mind their own business. So we wanted to see whether people mind business of other people in an elevator, but in this case, remember, we just simply was observing anything that could happen. It was not just about what they will do. So we did not have any hypothesis in mind what they will do, what they will say. So that's why it will refer to that as unstructured observation, which means we observe anything in an elevator then. And once again, once you know whether it's structured or non-structured, you write that in your proposal. So let's say you want to observe certain hypotheses, which means I'm only going to observe whether the respondents spend 12 minutes or 10 minutes or less. So if I have that hypothesis in mind, I'm answering the questions of the research that will be structured instead of non-structured. And then you continue, you compare disguised versus non-disguised, and you write it down. It's going to be a structured disguised or non-structured disguised. So let's look at the difference between the two. Disguised observation, it's whereby respondents are not aware they are being observed. So we've got the hidden camera. So like the term it indicates there, disguised, it talks about that it's hidden. which means that it could be a camera. And here we've got another practical example. An opposite of that is non-disguised observation, which is a visible. Respondents are aware that they are being observed. We can write the signs there, or we can show the cameras, or we can indicate that you are being observed. So the difference between disguised and non-disguised is whether the respondents are aware or not, or they are not aware. So once again, if in your research project, you have a structured research project, which means you've got certain hypotheses. You are in a supermarket. You want to know how many minutes they spend looking at your products, which means you're answering that question. The next question is whether the respondents are aware or they are not aware. So let's say in a supermarket, we don't want them to be aware because we want to collect not artificial data, because we feel like maybe respondents, as soon as they know that they are aware, they will change their behavior. So we want this to conduct it in a normal setting. So we want our research project or our observation to be disguised there so that respondents are not aware. So you continue, you write that part. So you don't just choose one element, you choose between each, because each of them, it shows you the difference between the opposite and that one. So next, we want to see if this is direct or indirect observation. With direct observation, it simply means it occurs immediately as it happens. For example, we can be in a supermarket pretending to be a shopper. We write the information, what we see with what the respondents are doing there. We've got another option, which is called indirect observation. For example, if we ask you, how do people behave when they consume alcohol? Yeah. If you say like observation of alcohol consumers, observe consumers, and then write down what they do, when they are drunk, you will see that is unstructured. We observe anything. If we start from scratch there, because we just said observe them. We did not say, do they become violent? Do they dance? If we ask those questions, that will be a structure. But if we don't ask those questions, we simply say just observe them after they took alcohol. How do they behave? That will be unstructured. And then depending whether they are aware, let's say maybe they are you're gonna go and also observe them in the, instead of observing them in the club, we're gonna put cameras there, and then we're gonna watch those CCTV cameras. So the respondents are not aware that they are being observed. So in other words, they only thought those cameras were, maybe they are hidden, they don't see them at all. So that observation does not happen immediately because we're going to watch it later. They're going to drink now and then behave in a certain way. It becomes indirect observation because it's also called trace analysis, because we're only going to basically watch them later. So it could also be a question of whereby how many, what is the preferred alcohol brand among the respondents. So if we want to know what is the preferred alcohol brand, we can do indirect observation. Instead of going to the bar or the nightclub or the tavern and look at the respondents, what they buy there, to say they buy Heineken, so Heineken is the most preferred, we can simply go to the trash. The trash will also still show us the trace of what was being the most alcohol brand that was bought a lot previous night in that particular club, because we will see that, okay, there's a lot of Savannah bottles here. Then this means that Savannah is mostly preferred, and that is indirect because we did not observe it as it happens. Natural, once again, you continue with your proposal, you choose here direct or indirect. So let's go back to our practical example here. We said we observe it's a supermarket. In a supermarket, it's structured, they are not sure. So if you continue to our project here, the next one is whether it's direct or indirect. Because we are observing them in a supermarket, this will be indirect because we're gonna watch CCTV recordings, which means we're gonna watch it later. So we don't watch it while it records, so that becomes indirect. So direct will be one where if maybe we watch them, we pretend to be mystery shoppers, or we use one of those mirror techniques and so on. That will be direct as it happens. Natural versus control observation. Natural observation is the one that happens in a normal environment, which means if we are interviewing or we are observing shoppers, we go to a supermarket. That is a normal supermarket environment or the normal environment. Control environment is a lab. Obviously, we ask them, please come and come to our lab, and then we observe them in the lab there. So that will be a controlled environment. A natural environment could also work like in things such as cinemas. We observe respondents in a cinema, we observe respondents at a museum. So that will be a normal environment that we actually take observation. Control environment, usually it also goes with non-disguised observation. As soon as you move subjects to a lab, they usually are aware that they are being observed. So this will be aligned as well. So if we watch those CCTV recordings, we can watch them. They are recorded in a bar or they are recorded in a supermarket. So that will be natural environment. So you choose there. And lastly, how are we going to observe the respondents or the subjects? This could take two forms. For example, it can be human observation. People observe and record information, or it could be mechanical observation whereby we use cameras are used for observation. They are the ones that are installed. So obviously we can be observers by going to a supermarket as well ourselves and pretend to be mystery shoppers, and then we observe customers there. So once again, you choose between the two and you indicate as well. So if you look at our practical example here, we said we're going to watch CCTV recording. So this it's a device. This is a mechanical device because that was a CCTV that was recording there. It was not a person looking at the behavior of the other respondents. And then you can indicate these are the observations that we're going to conduct. So that's why I was emphasizing that it's not actually 10 observations techniques. It's only two methods. You choose between structured and non-structured, disguised, non-disguised, so direct or non-direct, and so on. Another method is to choose the one that is applicable. If it's structured, you motivate it in the case study. Based on the case study, for example, if you say this is a structured, you indicate the hypothesis that you're going to observe. So you must always motivate your answers. If you say it's in disguised observation, you must motivate that the respondents are not aware that they are being observed. So if that information is indicated in the case study, you also articulate it here. Once again, you only use this when you're using observation. When you're using surveys, remember you'll be choosing between telephone interviews here, comparing with face-to-face interviews and so on. Okay, now I want us to conduct a learning activity to see if you could actually apply this theory or indicate that we have learned here. So we're gonna quickly do a quizzes game. You've played this one previously, so I think you know the step of a quizzes as well. So I'm gonna make it about 10 minutes. I think it's a 10 minutes quizzes. So if you wanna get the best experience of the quizzes game, use your smartphone to play quizzes, where else if you are attending my online session, you are attending it on a desktop or you are attending it on a laptop, because on your screen you'll be able to see the leaderboard, you'll be able to see your score as well as how are you doing compared with other students. It's important for me to actually look at the report. So it's going to be a live game whereby I will analyze the report to see which questions you struggled with. It's going to be a 15-minute learning activity. So I'm going to type the instructions of that learning activity now in the chat box. Where are we going now? Where are we going, Kwele? Let's go where? All right, let's continue here. Chapter 8, so quizzes. So as I was saying, it's best experience with your smartphone and a laptop. For example, I will play the game on the smartphone and I will look at the desktop for a screen here. So right now it's 2:00. It's 15 minutes, so we're gonna play this game up until 20 past. So let me type the instructions here. Learning activity. Okay, those are the instructions, but are you familiar with this? So step 1. And then step 2. So there is our game code there. Our game code is 958953. 958953. And then I will be able to see the participant here. So let me quickly paste that in the chat box here. And you can there is no case study for this, it's just a multiple choice question. So you don't need to read the study, you can just join the game immediately. I'm gonna start immediately as well as the game. So as soon as you join, you should appear on the leaderboard or on the scoreboard. So firstly, you go to joinmyquizzes.com if you haven't played it before. So basically you wanna go to that link there. If you are using a desktop and you are not using a smartphone anywhere, you simply paste it on the next tab, joinmyquiz.com. It's going to ask for a code like it asks here, and then you enter the game code. It's pasted in the chat box, so you take that game code. And you paste the game code there, or you write it down and then you write the game code. As soon as you join, it's going to ask for your nickname. And then you can press start. You can select if you don't want music and sound effects there. So I'm gonna start the game now. As soon as you have joined. And we're gonna play it up until 20 past, and then we're gonna discuss feedback or the answers. So I've got one participant, so I'm gonna start it while others are joining. So you'll follow those instructions there. It's just about 60 seconds per question. So read the question. So I'm gonna keep quiet while you play the game so that you can concentrate. But I'm here, you can unmute the mic and ask any questions if you have. So you're gonna play until 20 past.
Say, Mr. Mahlangu.
Yes.
So how do I move from where okay, when maybe let's just say you're asked to select two answers, how do I move from there? Because I'm stuck there.
Or there is a button at the end that says submit towards the end of the page. Does it show? You click two, then you click submit.
There's only the one that says select all to apply.
No, just choose two because the question asks you to choose two, right?
Yes, I
Yeah.
chose two.
And then you press submit. You must press the button submit afterwards. So there must be a button submit. It's usually at the bottom of the screen after those answers. You don't see it.
No, I'm not seeing it. I'll just lose this one then. Okay.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe it's your phone or the device, but it should have submit button there.
No, I think it went through with the two.
Oh, okay. It's because of the time. All right. Because there's
Yeah.
also time that is taking there. All right.
Oh, okay. So then when you're done answering the question, what do you do?
Once you're done answering the questions, we're going to discuss the feedback together. So we're going to be looking at the screen for each question. So we're just going to wait for the next 3 minutes for everyone to finish playing.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Okay, we're going to quickly discuss feedback. And for me to discuss feedback, I'll have to end the game so that it can generate the report. So if you are playing, please play quickly. I'm going to end the game now in the next minute so we can discuss the report and see questions that gave you a lot of problems and discuss that so you don't face similar problems in the future. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's quickly discuss feedback. This is an important part whereby we look at the question, special questions that gave you a lot of problems. So I'm going to quickly end the game now so that it can generate the report for us. So let's quickly have an overview here. Congratulations to winner. Oh, you're already the winner. So winner is number 1.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So next time you use the word winner, make sure you win as well, because it will be unfortunate to have a winner not being number 1. Congratulations for that spot there. So let's quickly look at the question, especially question which have like question 4. You'll see there question 4 0% short accuracy, which means no one got it right. We will need to look into that question into detail. What could be the problem there, and discuss that question. Where questions like question 6, you got all 100%, everyone got it right. I'm not worried about that. Questions such as the last question, question 15, 17%, question 15 as well as question 9, we'll look into that as well. So let's start with the one with 0%. Maybe there was something wrong with the question. Let's quickly see what was the question asking. So you will see question 4. Starting with question 1, there are 4 incorrect answers here. So this is also a red flag. Indicate the primary data collection approach that should be used in the below research study. Metro wants to measure the increased sales caused by half price promotion. So there are 2 players with indicated surveys there. That is an incorrect answer. The correct one was experiment. The ones who indicated observation instead of experiments, I'm not blaming you here. Observation and experiments are similar. It's just what are we measuring the variables. So in this case, they wanted to measure the variables of sales. So that could be a variable. It's not human that we're going to observe. So that makes it an experiment instead of an observation. Hence, it becomes an experiment rather than an observation. But it's better to choose observation than to choose survey. So there was no communication needed here. Remember, we're just going to run a promotion, half price promotion, and we look at the sales, whether people are buying or they are not buying. Question 4. No one's got this one correctly. So let's quickly look into that one. So it says indicate the survey method that should be used if the researcher wants to ensure that the respondents remain anonymous and their identity is not associated with the collect data. So this is about privacy confidentiality. Which interview can ensure that? Which answer did you choose? If you can unmute the mic and indicate for me.
I chose postal.
You chose postal, should be the correct one, but it says here no one chose correct. Because if you look into the answer, you see postal survey is the correct one. No one chose postal.
Really?
Yes, that's what the system says.
Oh, I'm only realizing it now. That is postal. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Or at least if you can be able to articulate that actually the correct answer was postal, although maybe you chose web survey, you chose personal interviews. But let's look into this. For example, the question, the respondents, they don't want to be known. They don't want their data to be known at all, who they are and so on. With personal interviews, 3 players chose that. With personal interviews, you'll have to meet with this person. You'll have to meet with the interviewer. They will know me, so I don't want them to know me. Telephone interviews, they already have my number. It cannot guarantee my sending my answers to become anonymous. But with postal, remember, with postal survey, they don't have to meet me, first of all. And secondly, if they don't have my address, it's easy for them to just throw in those letters into my yard. They can throw those letters in my yard without knowing who lives in that yard, meaning that there is no association. So postal survey, it has that advantage of remaining anonymity. And then when I send it back, I don't put my postal address back. With web-based survey, I see 2 players chose that one. It does some sort of encourage or guarantee anonymity, but you know the consent here. It's like someone can be able to look into your data, can be able to associate that you are the one who chose that correct answer, because we log in IP addresses, so it's still an issue here. Even with this webcams and the cameras that we have on the laptops, even if we switch them off, sometimes we are uncomfortable. We feel like they're still watching us. They are on. So web-based postal survey is the base for that. I think we will agree on that one. So let's quickly look at another question such as this one, whereby only 1 person was able to choose it correctly. Indicate the survey method that should be used if the researcher has limited financial budget and resources. Which one is cheap, do you think here?
It's postal.
Postal, remember you have to buy stamp, you have to print, I think it's web-based. Wouldn't you agree? Compared to postal? I fully agree with you. Personal is expensive than postal. Telephone is expensive than postal. Postal is the cheapest, but for a second, compare postal with web-based, the internet. Wouldn't you agree that the internet is much cheaper than this printing, buying envelope, buying postage stamp? Because with web-based, there is no cost at all. It's just sending email, sending a link. So hence, yeah.
I think I chose postal because web-based it's more segmented. I don't know if segmented is the right word, because it's not everybody that is able to use websites and email. So it's gonna like select a few people. Not everybody's gonna be able to like participate or I don't know, take part.
I fully agree with you. What you are talking about there, they refer to it as a target group because we are talking about the target group that maybe do these people have access to the computer? Do these people have computer literate skills? For example, that's what you mentioned.
Yes.
So I'm also going to reference a page here on the textbook. So most of these questions, as well as the understanding how do you choose a method, just reference page 154. On page 154, you've got the heading that's saying choosing the appropriate survey method, and then it tells you the characteristics of each. So at the moment, you are referring to the one that talks about target group, which is the second last bullet on page 155. So this question, if you look at it, it says the method that should be used if the researcher, so this is about the researcher rather than the respondents. The researcher himself, he has no financial budget. For example, we say conduct research, but we only have 5,000 for this research project. You already know personal interviews are going to cost you a lot, so we can eliminate this, we can eliminate this. When it comes to web-based, although this might have implications, I fully agree with you on the implications that not everyone, but that is a respondent's problem, not the researcher's problem. So as a researcher, the question was saying we having a problem of a budget, we want to save money. And so postal is the second one, but the best one is web-based. So I agree postal is still cheaper or more affordable than the other two, but I still believe web-based, there is no cost compared to postal, as well as it's discussed on page 155, if that makes sense. And lastly, we had, I think it was the last question. Yeah, yes, these two last questions about there was only one correct answer here. It's about observation. I see the other one you managed to get it correct, so I'm not going to discuss this one into detail. So let's come to this question whereby we ask here, select two characteristics of the observation technique, that is question 15, to be applied for the following study. The researcher wants to observe the behavior of alcohol consumers by watching video recordings obtained from nightclubs, pubs, taverns across Pretoria. So he's gonna be watching recordings. Is that human? No, it's not human. So those who chose human, remember the videos. If you watch the video, is the video that observed the people. So they were recorded through the CCTV camera. That's what was taking place. So we did not go to a nightclub and observe people. It was going to be human observation if we went there and then we observe and wrote it down. But because we are watching the video recordings, it simply means we were not there. It was the video that was recording their behavior. So hence it's mechanical observation instead of human observation. And lastly, most of you chose indirect observation, which was correct. Maybe you associated with the incorrect human observation. That's why your score is low. But I see there is a high score of indirect observation, which means it does not take place immediately. Direct observation, it will be taking place immediately if we went there and then we watch it while it happens. So here we're not gonna go there. Remember, we have to collect all these videos. So they're gonna behave, they're gonna party, and then we collect these videos, we watch them maybe the following week or the following month, hence it becomes indirect observations. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope this learning quiz was fun and it was also allow you to learn more. So in the chat box, please indicate your mood at the moment. If you are happy, this brings us to the end of the learning session today. So have a lovely week and stay safe, ladies and gentlemen. Goodbye.